I'm opening. We have an eye, sort of a nostril, 2 teeth. One of the teeth has a small cavity. Close call, folks, but I think we got here just in time.
Presented by Maria Menounos and Kevin Undergaro. This is Anatomy of a Movie. In-depth discussions and breakdowns of various movie titles. And now that you've seen the movie, let the dissection begin.
Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us for another Anatomy of a Movie. This week's Operation Lone Survivor. I'm John Comerford. I'm joined on the panel by Sarah Stratton.
Hello. I really liked this week's Operation. Operation. I liked it.
Of course. Double meaning. And Phil Svitek.
Hello, everybody.
And in the booth is Marissa Serafini. Marissa, thanks very much for joining us.
Hello.
Okay, so did it survive your scrutiny?
Okay, so I know Phil saw this very recently, but I saw this movie approximately, I want to say over a week and a half ago. Mm-hmm. So really close to when it just came out.
Right.
And I'm living with what's really stuck with me.
Yeah.
And versus I know when I just got out of it, I was thinking about kind of a lot of the minor characters, like the 16 who came in the helicopter and all those scenes. And up until we came into the studio, I'd completely forgotten about all those. I was literally just thinking about the 4 and about their journey and what I took away from it that way. And I think that's a good thing because I think that's where the message and the heart of this story is. And that stuck with me, so that I'm really happy with.
All right. There you go. Phil.
I really enjoyed it. Through no fault of their own, the timing couldn't have been worse with Captain Phillips and these guys. Because, I mean, at least for me... And, and it's kind of been happening with the panel just in general, through our collective knowledge. We've been doing these for a while now. Yeah. And so we're going to be referencing movies that we've talked about. Sure. And for me, with this one in particular, a huge comparison can be made with Captain Phillips. So, had there been a greater separation, I probably would have enjoyed this movie even more. But
were you comparing it to Captain Phillips as you were watching it, or was that a later, like an afterthought?
It was at the start of the movie, then once in the middle, and then definitely once at the end.
Okay, so it was really like present in your mind as you were watching it.
Yeah, but that, again, I really enjoyed this movie. I definitely want to talk about this movie. If truth be told, does it hold up as high as Captain Phillips now?
It's fascinating that you say that because I never went there as I was watching it, which is, I'm really wanting to know what caused that. So what made you think Captain Phillips in the middle of this?
Okay, Captain Phillips, it's about Lone Survivor, just the title itself. Right. To me, meant, okay, it's about one man's kind of journey through survival. Right. So Captain Phillips, one man's journey through survival, and also, obviously, in a hostile environment, here you have the Afghanistan terrain and everything else, and there you have pirates and whatnot. And at the end, the big difference, if I can, I guess, cut sooner, is, at the end, Tom Hanks' walk and his last speech is so earned. Right. Whereas this, we get it at the beginning, and I was like, I'm not ready for that.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. Sure.
Okay, so that's interesting. Like, for me, it's so different because the people involved put themselves in different situations. Like, the men in Lone Survivor went into this mission completely knowing, like, what they get into. This is their job. This is their career. And Captain Phillips, it was some pirates came over. To me, it's a totally different situation. For me, the monologue or the explanation didn't come in too early, but that's probably because before I watched this, I had watched kind of behind the scene footage about interviews with the families, descriptions of the guys, the training that was going into it. So when I went in to see Lone Survivor, I was already equipped with the knowledge of kind of who these soldiers were as people and how their families felt about them. So I already had established an emotional connection to them. So I already was invested in them as their lives, as other than just a Navy SEAL. Other than that, to me, they were actual people already going in. So I didn't need them, I guess, to earn that, explanation to already feel worried about them or to have a connection to them. But movies on the opposite side, movies I guess should stand alone. I shouldn't have to watch.
Well, I mean, you had that
footage.
coming in, which is that's great that you brought that in. I didn't see those. I mean, I knew they were out there, but I chose not to because I wanted to. Again, I take the movie as it comes. For me, the movie, if you take the movie as just this chronicle of this man's event, as Phil said, this one man's journey through survival, then I thought it was very successful. I mean, one of the biggest criticisms is there wasn't any time spent with character development, but you didn't need it because you had seen all that, so you already knew them as humans and all this other stuff. And I think that's warranted. I think it's a fun movie. I liked watching it. I thought it was, and for what it is, I think it's a good movie. But if you're going into it expecting a lot of character development, you will be sorely dissatisfied. And I think that's a warranted criticism. But it's still a good movie.
That surprises me because the first 20 minutes is spent with them like racing and things like that.
Yeah, there's not a hell of a lot of character.
It's
character. I get it. It's characterization. It's not.
It's not development.
It's showing the world. It's showing the environment. It's not giving you the actual individual attention on differentiating kind of who each soldier is from one another. Right. It's kind of grouping them together and showing their lifestyle.
And I think that was great. But there's no development after it. Once the fight starts. When the fight starts, there isn't much development after that, and there isn't any time for it, so you get it. But in other movies where you've had, for instance, the easy one is Saving Private Ryan. There's more character development in that one. Of course, they had more time to do it. But anyway, but it doesn't stop me from enjoying this movie. I just think it's a warranted criticism. I don't think it's but you just have to know that going in. It's just that's not what this is. It's not a character piece.
You can do what I did,
or you can see exactly
watch behind the scene footage that they provided you with.
Yeah, you can do that absolutely, and then you got
gain your emotional connection, and then go watch it,
right.
and it's still
very
a great
successful.
movie.
I mean, it's still surprising to me that we kind of question out character development, things like this. There's 007, the most successful franchise in the history. There's no character development.
Well, they are more and more these days. They are doing it more and more. In the beginning, I agree.
Okay,
I totally
agree.
40. No, I completely agree. There's no argument. And I'm not. And again, I don't disagree that it's a good movie. I liked it. I think it's a good movie for what it is. I'm just saying that I think it's warranted when people say there's no character development. But why you're going to this for character development is kind of baffling to me.
This is a realistic,
and that's what
movie.
it is. And if you can accept it for that, I think it's great because that's what it is. But people who want it to be something else, I go, well, you just totally missed the boat on what this movie is.
I agree. And if that was, I think a mission of this was to show a very realistic depiction that really got people to see another viewpoint, and to describe the troubles of this one man's story and what he went through. And I do think they did all of that.
Yeah, I thought that, and I thought it was so smart that at the beginning they showed the archival footage of the guys.
I like the training.
I thought that was great because here's the thing: if you not had that, at least in my, this is my belief. All the stuff that we saw, all the tumbling down and the getting shot up and all the stuff that they endured, you would go, that's just Hollywood stuff. Until you see all the training they go to beforehand, then you realize what kind of person can endure that. And you see what they're made of. And had it not been for that context, it would have been too easy to write off, that's just special effects. They're doing,
It's interesting you say that because, I mean, might as well start with the first topic. In terms of the writing of this, right? Obviously, it's based off a book. Yeah. And
Luttrell.
Marcus Luttrell's book. And in the book, he actually chronicles from his start in the Navy SEALs in 1999, all the way to that. But in writing it, and obviously it was like, okay, well, that really doesn't make sense to put it in. Let's focus on this one event. But by doing that little, it obviously serves that purpose, but it also kind of... It didn't chronicle Marcus specifically in that little opening, but it pays homage.
Yeah.
But it also does, homage.
It does, but it really sets the context for who these people are, for what kind of person can
who puts themselves in this situation.
Yeah, who's not only willing to, but has physical capability to do this. And right then I'm going, geez. I mean, I'm just.
One thing I really did like about this movie is as action-packed and physical as it was, what carried through was the mental
toughness.
Struggle
Exactly.
that it is. And that gets overlooked, I think, so much in more in action films. It becomes all about muscle endurance. And in this, it's like you see how hard it is.
What they endure. Yeah, and it's the mental game that they're able to. And I think that's set up by all that archival footage. I think because, I just love that when I met my limit. And they ring the bell, the helmet goes down.
And they're done. And it's such like a crazy.
Yeah, and these guys who go through this, these 4 guys who go through, they haven't met their limit yet. They just keep going. And I just go, wow, my hat's off to them.
Exactly, and
That's
it's
what's
this
so
continued fight,
impressive.
and like that's what Marcus Terrell said, just about the fact that it's continuously never giving up.
Yeah.
There was never a sense of giving up until the people died.
Exactly.
Like it's just always pushing through, and that's what I really like about this film is that the fact that I feel like from what I've read and from all the interviews I've seen behind this footage, their goal for this movie to get the message across, to show that side of that world really came through for me.
Yeah.
And from a filmmaking perspective, to articulate your movie so well in the way, in the vision you wanted is a really impressive feat. So I was very happy with it. Phil, why are you flipping through pages of research already?
Well, I think he's going to the writing. He wants to go back. Well, okay, so obviously, well, for those who don't know, the director, Peter Berg, also wrote the screenplay. He based it mostly on almost entirely off of Luttrell's book, but a couple things he got from real-world experience. He was embedded with...
Well, he loves
Navy
working with
SEALs.
veterans anyway.
Yes, he does.
You know,
often uses them and used them in this.
as a producer role.
Yeah.
Harry H. producer. I'll look his name up. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I was going to mention how a lot of this movie was produced by benefactors who had all donated $1 million, over $1 million, because they believed in this story. But on top of that, his inclusion of Marcus Terrell, and therefore through bringing him to the project, how they got the Navy involved and the government involved, and how they
all
got
the
a
armed
lot of
services, actually. All of them,
and
to
they
some
got
degree.
access to files.
Yeah,
and to
unprecedented.
exactly.
I mean, no civilian had ever been embedded with a Navy SEAL team, and Peter Berg was allowed to go in there for whatever it is, a month or whatever, and while he was writing it.
Yeah.
So that was kind of cool.
I mean, their whole goal was, if civilians, this is one of the veterans from Afghanistan. If civilians don't accept their civic obligation to know some history of our nation's conflict, then why send our young men and women into harm's way in the first place? And so that's what that carried through in the movie.
Yeah, that's the least we could do is know.
Yeah, and because all these people were involved who had actual experience and were in these situations, we got that realism, and that affected the writing, and it affected the care that was taken with this movie. All the access that they got, I think, it made it seem more realistic, just with all the training they went through, being the actors being trained by the Navy SEALs themselves and spending weeks learning how to shoot, learning how to think about weaponry and strategy and everything. All the attention to detail through the collaboration of people in the industry and people who lived this really came through and helped, I think, his writing and what he did with this script and his interpretation.
And we also have to ask Marissa what her thoughts were on this. So Marissa, when you get a chance, chime in here about your overall impressions and what stuck out most to you when you were watching this.
What I loved is that, yes, we covered the mental and physical strengths of all these characters. It's just the realization that these people really did exist, and people like this and the Navy SEALs and all military aspects, there are people like this in the world that are fighting for our country and having this mental capability to withstand all these obstacles that they go through. It really made me think and appreciate all the people that are out in missions that we don't even think about, and they're fighting every single day, and all these untold stories that keep going that we never heard of, that I feel like there should be more movies like this out there.
Yeah, I thought, because you brought up James Bond, which I think is hysterical, because, in the beginnings of those first Bond features, whenever he was beat up or shot at him, nothing ever bad ever happened to him and stuff like that, and he's kind of, quote, a spy agent hero kind of thing. And here these guys are that are getting literally shot like crazy, thrown down mountains or flipping down, getting pummeled into rocks and everything like that, and you see all the wounds and battle scars and everything like that, and they keep going. And we don't see them as the heroes. We see, meaning I'm talking about in movies. These guys, these are real guys. They're not heroes. They're real men. And I think that's the part that I found so, because I've seen dozens of war movies, and I think, but never has one where I went, it just was relentless about how much got just dealt with. Go ahead.
And it's actually how much they withstand and push through. And in a typical film, when you see people give up or you see people get defeated, and in this film which is based off of reality, and like for instance, I know one of the things that Berg referenced and referred to was he had the autopsy reports.
Yeah.
And they were insane. These people were taking over 11 like bullets and still pushing through. And that, if you didn't know that this movie was true or based off a book, it'd be so easy to be, or you just wouldn't believe it.
Yeah, you'd think it was just a Hollywood,
exactly.
It's like, oh, I'm in another one of those Hollywood movies.
And it just escalates how crazy,
right?
But how amazing these people are, and it was shocking. And I do think that they did it in a way that visually, look, we are gaining.
That shuffling you guys heard was me trying to shuffle in Dimitri.
Now
quietly.
So we'll get him set up. But while he's getting set up, I think that for me that was the best thing about the movie, just that it. Because of the context that they put it in, and these are real human beings and all that other stuff, and then you see the onslaught that they have to endure, and it just gets relentless. And you think every once in a while, I'm watching, I'm going, oh yeah. I go, no, that's, and there are reports that says, well, actually, it's not as, the movie isn't as bad as it really was because they couldn't include everything. And I just go, what else could they? I mean, the fact that Luttrell was paralyzed and had to crawl 7 miles to the village.
Which I was so surprised they left out. For everyone who doesn't know, in the book there's a huge segment where we get to see visually that he like falls into what's somewhat of a pond or something. It's rescued, but
some sort of kid.
There was a whole segment of him literally crawling and using his arm crawl to get himself because he couldn't move his legs, and I think it was like 7 miles or something. Of
course, it's not. I mean, I guess in film time, that crawling 7 miles may not be that interesting, but the fact that, I mean, again, those are the kinds of things that they couldn't include, and I'm going, well, all the stuff that I was just amazed at that, which is why I forgive the character development, because that's not what this movie is.
And visually, how they illustrated. From the wounds to my favorite shots were actually them falling down the cliffs. I thought those were so crazy.
Yeah, I didn't need them slowed down.
Yeah,
but I did enjoy them.
Well, let's talk a little bit about the shots, because they obviously didn't use any ropes or pulleys or cranes or that was all real, and the stunt coordinator and I guess the second unit director basically told us okay, just jump off the cliff and fall. However you land is however you land. We'll get the shot.
It works amazingly.
Yeah.
Oh, your cube is upside down. You're upside down.
That's why we get it.
Again,
so just for the listeners, Dimitri Panos, who has returned after 2013 to the panel. Welcome back.
It feels good to be back. Happy New Year, everybody. Well, Marissa and I held the ship steady last week, but it's good to see everybody.
Yes.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Well, jump on in, because obviously we're about to talk about it, but go ahead and give me your overall impressions. Nobody's heard from you yet. So
I watched the movie last night. Actually, for the first time. For me, first up, Peter Berg is not one of my favorite directors. Subtlety is not a word that is in his lexicon and or dictionary. Friday Night Lights I enjoyed, but his first movie, Very Bad Things, to me was not a very good movie. And he's just loud, and he has an impact when it comes to violence. And when I was hearing about this movie, it just seemed as if he was carrying on his tradition. And, because one common theme you always hear is that about this particular movie is it's very brutal. So when I went to go see it, I was, it wasn't a movie that I was like really, I have to say, looking forward to. I don't like to go necessarily see brutal movies, and knowing that it's Peter Berg and, he just came off a Battleship. So I ended up liking the movie better than I thought. I thought it was pretty well done. Maybe because I psyched myself up for like this brutality, and and there were parts that were uncomfortable. I thought that I thought it was pretty good. And, you talk about
Would you define it as being brutal? Is that an adjective you would use to describe this movie?
Yeah, I mean, it's a brutal, it's a brutal movie. It's not, I don't find this to be.
I would say it's, maybe this is just a small distinction, thank you, in my mind, because I would say that it's graphic and realistic about war. I would not say that it's brutal. Maybe it's also because like I just saw scenes from the movie, like what's it called, Raise, and that's all about like people just literally pummeling
yeah
people.
I mean,
but that's guess it's just that's such a strange word for me to associate with this movie.
It wasn't brutal to me because as soon as those goat herders came in, it was what the
right,
you know. And at that point, you know, Marcus doesn't like to say it was hopeless. He hates that word and that people associate their situation with hopelessness. But it was like, okay, now we have, you know, god damn, like worst luck in the world.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely, and it escalated. I mean, you know, it starts off with communication problems. It starts, you know, where are they? And finding, you know, they found their guy, they find their target, and, you know, then the shepherds come along. What do you do? And, you know, one of the aspects I love, you know, I love the irony. I love making a moral choice and how making that moral choice, you're doing the good thing, and yet that's still bite you in the ass for doing the good thing.
What I liked about it,
so
what I like, you know, in terms of writing specifically, what I loved about it, it could have been very simple for them to, had they not brought in CNN, I don't think that scene would have worked as well.
Oh yeah,
you know, because that was like, okay, well, no one, you know, because you just look at it like, okay, it's just 4 dudes in the woods. Had they killed them, yes, on screen it would have been brutal to see. But in real life, it's like, okay, nobody wouldn't really known about it. But like, okay, wait, this would have been worldwide news.
right.
no, and it absolutely would have. And I was just going, why don't you just leave them there tied up and, you know, leave them to their own devices to try to get the hell out, at least buy yourself some time. But they made a moral choice. And so our soldiers, our SEAL team here, made a solid moral choice. So their compass was set straight. It just ends up biting them in the ass.
Well, there's
really
a lot
bad.
of controversy about that.
Yeah, I was going to say,
Go ahead.
sorry, I'm like attacking your word usage. I'm
No,
just
but
so
a lot of
particular
people
today.
have that same argument.
About whether or not this was a moral choice and how the media has affected the game of war, which is a big controversy associated with this movie, and how, like, you know, what is the greater good? How is this being established? And yes, for an everyday civilian, moral choice, totally don't kill the red kid. In a time of war, I agree that maybe the best solution would have been to just leave them tied up, and then you kind of get this like limbo area where you're not really doing bad either way. You know, you're walking that middle ground. But it's hard that people who are trying to save the country or on these missions are then being inhibited by the media's coverage and how they spin their actions.
The argument is that by letting them free, they put other soldiers in harm's way.
No,
and those people got killed.
But they had that argument there.
Yeah.
Luttrell specifically says, we don't kill kids. I mean, he says that. So there is, and they know that they don't kill kids. They, you know, the argument's not about whether they're doing right or wrong. The argument, and it was Ben Foster's character that says, I care about you, I care about you. These people, not so much. But they make their decision and they abide by the decision that they make, in part because they're brothers. That's what they're trained to do. But also because they do have a moral center.
But let's be clear, they don't make a decision. Their leader does.
Yes, but
so they follow it because that's what they're trained to do, and that's what they do.
Yes, but a leader is only as good as the people that he has to help him make that right decision.
Oh, but people in that situation did not agree. That was very clear put, that not everyone was on board for that same plan.
That's true, but I see. I would contest that only to the fact that they knew that killing kids that's not a good thing to do. Let's separate, because it wouldn't be a good thing to do. We know that. We need to try to survive, so you know we're going to make best with what's due. Now, there wasn't a time where Taylor Kitsch's character ever said, I made the wrong decision. It was Luttrell, it was Mark Wahlberg's character who said, hey man, I'm sorry, I made the wrong decision, because he seemed to be the guiding force, even though it was Kitsch's call on that, his character's call to make that happen. So for me anyways, there was a moral decision, and that comes into play later on, because there are these villagers who save Luttrell, who have their moral compass, and they make their decision knowing that the wrath of the Taliban are going to come in and strike on their village for making a moral decision as well. So I think the morality does come into it, and the irony of it all is that, and they even say, it's like Jesus, it's like we did the good deed, and now look what happens.
That's what makes this movie such an interesting story and a real life situation, because it's constantly these people getting the worst case scenario. It's they're put in these situations, and it's always the worst case scenario. Oh, we're on a mission, and of course we run into the goat herders, and we're gonna let them free. Oh, and the kid does run down really fast. Oh, and we're surrounded. It's constantly these decisions that are small choices that escalates by worst case scenario happening. And that's what made it a good movie. And it is true, because that's ironic and adds these layers of who's happening in what community. And you see different people making different choices and how it affects them.
Yeah, and I think the way Peter Berg wrote his script, I mean, he definitely plays off of good, bad, what they're up against. But, for me personally, I mean, I do. I think that it was about, these soldiers put in this predicament. They had to make a decision. And eventually, even their leader decides, we can't do that. Aside from that, that's not what we're here to do. That's not what we do. As brothers, as comrades in arms, as soldiers, we're not here to kill kids. And they knew that these kids, it wasn't even a question to me as to whether or not they were going to keep their mouths shut. We knew that they were going to open
you
their
knew
mouths.
that. You knew that because it's a movie, and we know where it's ending up.
No, I think as soldiers, they knew because they were planning out. They said, as soon as we cut and run, we got to get up over here.
True.
They knew exactly what was going to happen.
I think that is, it's a planning for worst case scenario.
Yeah,
it's
sure.
like you're hoping that, okay, they're going to recognize, we set them free, they're not going to go, but we're planning to get out of here as quickly as possible because we're not stupid and going to rely on that. But it's always worst case scenario. It's being a smart soldier and always knowing the options.
Yeah. So, but yes, I do think that the movie was brutal, and if you don't think that,
why would anybody not think it was going to be graphic, brutal, whatever terminology you want to use? It is a war movie, so I mean, you got to know going in, and it shouldn't be any other thing. If you ask me, if you're going to depict this kind of thing in a war situation, then it should be, because that's what it is.
Well, here's where I'll take it, and here's where I'll go. The Ben Foster death scene, that was not easy to watch. And I think Peter Berg, it's one thing to get shot up, and you can you can see him getting shot up and stuff like that. The way I see it, that was written in the script, because obviously Luttrell and he were separated. So Luttrell, I don't know how it is in the book. I haven't read the book.
For Matt that death specifically, they got those from autopsies.
Sure.
So that was, although Luttrell wasn't there, that was taken specifically from.
Yeah, but from an autopsy, you don't.
No, process of exactly.
You don't get the process. So Peter Berg filmed that in a very uncomfortable, brutal way, where he was up against the tree. They were taking shots. The bullets were missing. And eventually it was going to happen. It was just a matter of when. Not an easy scene to sit.
Some critics have said that it's war porn at its worst. Yeah, that's what they call it.
I've heard that.
So let's talk about that. So do you think he did that because he wants to say how horrible and brutal war is, and we should be aware of that? Or do you think it was just because Peter Berg's into war porn? Or do you think he was saying, no, this is the reality of it?
I disagree about war porn.
I think, again, by him hanging out with so many veterans and employing veterans, him and a cinematographer just wanted to show a realistic story. I mean, initially when they were... upon their first confrontation, I was like, oh my god, this is like every other movie. Everyone but the good guys is missing these guys. And then they got shot, and they got shot again. It's like, holy Jesus. They're getting, and through that they were able to persevere and go, I mean, I forget how many each of them got shot. Could have been up to 20 times at some point, but they kept going. Unlike, again, if this was a regular action movie and it wasn't realistic, all the bad guys would have missed.
Yeah. Well, and to your point regarding the autopsy, they had said that Ben Foster's character, Axelson, Axe.
Mad Axe.
Like he was, they said that he was shot at least at the very 17 times.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't agree with the term war porn. There, the criticisms have been, I've heard war porn. I've heard other times say that it glorifies war. I disagree with those comments. I disagree with that at all. I don't think it glorifies war. They said it's jingoistic. That I agree with, but I don't see anything wrong with that being the movie that we're watching, and we're watching these. They're brothers in arms, so they're going to have that machoistic, jingoistic kind of thing, and that didn't necessarily bother me.
Have to in the situation you're putting it in
Yeah,
a way.
I didn't really find
Sure.
it that jingoistic because there seemed to be balance at the end of it anyway. So it wasn't. I didn't think it was. I didn't get that. I was like, all right, I didn't see it.
Yeah, I think and that's why I think a lot of the reviews have been split, and there's been some divisiveness. Listen, again, I'm not the biggest Peter Berg fan. I thought that this movie was good, but it did bring up other war movies for me, and another thing to point out about this particular movie and war movies of recent. About 5 years ago, you couldn't pay people to go see a war movie. Our Hurt Locker, which won for Best Picture, is the lowest grossing Best Picture movie in the history of Oscars. Nobody went to go see that. Great film. Nobody wanted to. I tend to believe that Zero Dark 30 sort of kind of changed the landscape. Zero Dark 30 comes out, and basically it gave audiences a catharsis. There was a bad guy.
It gave him a win.
It gave him a win. And in this case, even though people die, this movie too gives you a sense of hope. What I feel is the saving grace to this movie is the end. I thought that the end actually had heart. In fact, I wish it had a little more.
Which part are you talking about? When in the hospital, or are you talking about the village?
I'm talking about at the end, like first when he's in the village. When the U.S. troops come in, number one, it's a great aerial attack scene. They come in and they just
completely fabricated, by the way. Did not actually occur, but it still makes for a good movie.
It made for a good movie. But it gave that catharsis. It's like we win. And then when they're taking him out and he says, hey, that guy comes with me, and they're like, not now, he can't come. But then when he stops and he hugs the kid, I thought that had a lot of heart. And then at the end, when they throw the title cards up and they talk about the village and their beliefs, I thought that was a very good, smart touch. And I also liked the touch that they had where they showed the snapshot of Luttrell with the actual guy. So to me, again, we're going back to moral compass. I think that the movie showed that it has some heart. We win. We did get the guy back. There was tragic consequence and loss. My thing is, though, did they ever get the Shah?
Well, let me ask you guys this. If the whole goal was to, and it seems it was, to reflect as accurately as they could. And by the way, from reading, Universal was kind of really hands off.
Yeah,
and they Peter Berg was kind of shocked at how autonomous he really got to be, and so in that respect, I understand why you would have a scene at the end like that, like you had in the village. But if you're going to be realistic, that didn't happen. Luttrell didn't flatline.
The Taliban didn't fight the village. There was none of that.
Right.
I mean, the Shah himself might have not even been with Al Qaeda.
Yeah.
What else was?
I have a whole.
So I mean, in that respect, if you're Marcus Luttrell didn't pull a bullet out of his leg,
or shrapnel, whatever the hell it was. That's what it looked like. Shrapnel.
It was bloody, and it was I think hitting bone or something. So it was bad. It was bad.
Yeah, it wasn't pretty.
Thank you for clarifying. Thank you, sir.
In terms of the writing, obviously those were very specific choices to make this more of a story. But if your goal, I mean, could it have been more accurate and been satisfying in the way that we're talking about?
Well, sure, but he, for whatever reason, he chose not to and wanted to finish. I guess he went third act. Let's have a big fight.
Exactly.
Let's wrap it up.
Well, and plus, like the bookends, like I think what Peter Berg approached this as a movie and as a movie script, and he had read the book, and he adds the bookends of him flatlining. Which we come to, those little nuances I don't mind so much because he was trying to make a dramatic movie. I think throughout this year we've talked about movies based on true stories, and Captain Phillips was one,
it's
and
a big
Dallas
thing this year.
It really is, and it's really in some cases because we had discussion of Captain Phillips, and it sort of works. For me, it didn't work so much in Dallas Buyers Club because they were just making up people now, and which didn't happen. This, that he went through hell, and they didn't shy away from the hell that he went through, and you knew that he was saved by a farmer or another shepherd, and he had this relationship. I think they changed the name of the guy in the movie. So if you're changing the names, that's fine. He wanted to make a little bit more dramatic.
But it didn't bother you that he made up that whole... he made up the whole fight scene at the village, and that's what makes the card that is so important, or had an impact on you. The fact that they had the title card at the end explaining what their cultural belief. But all that's made up, and that's all right with you?
That for this movie, where he didn't make up characters that influenced the outcome of the plot.
Guys, if you're wondering what this is about, watch our Dallas Buyers Club.
I just don't get the inconsistency.
No, it's not an inconsistency. I mean, I get for dramatic, like we talked about how they did it for Captain Phillips, which is fine, where they sort of kind of fudged around, and you need to do that for dramatic license. I understand that, and I'm lenient towards that. My only problem with Dallas Buyers Club is you made up two of your main supporting characters that there was never any dialogue. You yourself said, geez, I wish that they beefed up the relationship. I'm like, you can't beef up a fake relationship. He wasn't beefing up any relationships with the people that saved him. So to make that dramatic pause, situation. Yeah, just beef up the situation. For a movie, you need to do it. I never read the book. Okay. So I don't understand. Who here read the book?
I've not read the whole book, but I live with someone who has.
Good enough. Great.
Can I take that?
Yeah.
No, actually,
I don't know how
we allow hearsay here.
I have a lot of hearsay on this movie.
We actually have some great hearsay.
There you go.
That I want to get it out of her. And if she won't, I will.
Then we'll make it up.
I've heard so much hearsay on this movie. So I have a friend who worked with Taylor Kitsch at work, so I worked in this movie, so a lot of that, and so they were reading it for source material.
Oh, nice.
Everything, that interpretation, even before the movie came out. I've been around the material a lot, and just, I don't know, I'm going to stop, because I'm not talking about that.
All right,
okay. So. There's someone I know on this panel who knows somebody.
Who knows somebody.
Who knows somebody.
Who knows somebody.
It's not me.
I'm not.
No,
stop.
All right.
Why?
Anyway,
we have to just.
No.
Now the fans want to know. Now it's just going to be like.
I want to know.
Okay, if they really want to know, they can comment and ask. And if like.
No, I'm going to.
If 15 people comment and ask about it, then I'll tell you.
You don't want to put that in print. No. You just have it here. Then you
can
deny.
I will. I say about the writing.
Okay. Something. No. It involves drugs and survival.
Phil,
is all I'll say.
Anyway,
why don't you let me get the truth out?
All right, no.
Because.
Oh my goodness! All right.
So what I thought was, I didn't like the choice, but I'm sure other people have opinions about it. But the opening shot, well, when we get into the movie, not the archival footage, but when the first thing we see it's Mark Wahlberg that's all shot up and he's being rescued and stuff like that. I'm going, why show me who it is? Now I know who the lone survivor is. Now I know that people.
Come on.
No, but here's the reason why I say that is Tom Hanks in Saving Private Ryan. We don't know he's the guy that's gonna die. We don't know who's. I'm just saying it would have been more interesting because what I wanted was just a soldier. I didn't want to see his face, and you tell me you see all the bullet wounds, and they're doing all the work on him. And then I see all the stuff he's endured. I don't know who it is. Then I'm up on the mountaintop.
I understand, but
because Mark Wahlberg could have been the guy that said, "Look, I'm gonna that classic thing where it says, okay, I'm gonna wait here. You go." Yeah, I could have done that. That would have just to add a little dramatic tension for me because it was like,
okay, that's Blood Diamond type stuff. Got it.
And I guess that doesn't bother me at all.
It didn't bother me. It's just like, that's just because
easy. Number one, it's the title in itself is the biggest spoiler. You know that.
Yeah, one guy. What I'm saying, you got 4 guys on a hill. It would have been like, okay.
But the only thing, the marketing. Your argument is actually good, but I think most people buy like everything was so heavily Mark Wahlberg focused that it was like, okay.
But and then there's a book out, and then all you have to do is to go on to IMDb.
Exactly. But you just said the 4 of us here, none of us have read the book.
No, but I've read IMDb. I knew that he's
point.
Mark Luttrell, and I
didn't even need to do that.
Mark
I just
Luttrell or Lone Survivor for that matter.
The greater argument, and then we should segue into actors. But the greater argument for me was I would have liked to save that. It didn't feel earned.
Yeah, I understand that point. Yeah,
it was something that, and yes, there's a time and a place where you start somewhere in the middle. Mm-hmm. But here's the thing: but to start it literally at the end, usually, like let's say with the Odyssey, right? One of the first tales to ever do this, you kind of start somewhere. Let's say 3/4 in. Mm-hmm. You retell the story, you get back to that point, and then now that you know the past, now you still have a little bit ways to go.
Yeah, because you weren't giving up, and we already know there's a lone survivor. So by showing us up the front, I mean, it doesn't. Mm-hmm. What purpose does it serve?
You already know that Luttrell is the lone survivor.
That's not my point.
The point is
about Luttrell. We're talking about something else now.
The point is, what was the benefit?
It's a bookend. It's a bookend. It starts the movie. It ends the movie. It even says 3 years past.
We get what it is. It's not. That's not the question. It's like, what's the point? I mean, why bother?
What was really the emotional resonance for the audience? Like, okay, here's where we're getting it. You know what I mean? So as you're watching the opening moments, is it supposed to be like, okay, everything's good now and we're having races, but it's all going to go to hell? We already knew it was going to go to hell, right?
And we already knew one guy was going to survive.
That was my only real nitpick with the movie. It's it didn't feel. I didn't want it there.
Yeah. It didn't bother me as much as Lone Ranger bookend.
I totally agree with you it's because the one in Captain Phillips, you really earned that one, and that thing makes the movie for me.
Yeah,
that end sequence when you realize what's happening.
I mean, I get it. They played it upon first cut. They played it very linear. Mm-hmm. And then with the editors, they wanted to kind of, it felt right to kind of intercut things more. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And, we got that with the different air bases and especially in the beginning. But this one was just, that particular moment, it just went too far.
It just stuck out for you.
Yeah.
No. Okay. Now, it's interesting that you mentioned that Universal took a
backseat.
Well, yeah, and it's interesting because... he wrote the script for Universal Studios, and they optioned the book, but he went through a different financier, which is Randall Emmett, who financed the movie. He raised the money through whatever his sources were, and they were going to release it with Universal, but they didn't want to make a movie per se with a studio, so they were able to. That they had enough money to make the film, maybe a few more producers than normal. This is Peter Berg. But from his standpoint, cast crew is very smooth. It wasn't different. I think they may have been given some more freedoms because there were certain things like the jump scenes, the both of them. There were certain things that I had seen. There was a great video on Epix. I think it's like The Envelope Please, and they had the cast and crew with Peter Berg, and he talked about those scenes. And it didn't sound like they had it as planned out as they wanted to. And that, to me, like, if there was a studio there, a studio would have gone, what the hell? No way. Like, you're insured. Like, we can't allow, like... You figure it's really funny because he talks about like the first stuntman and they were all testosterone up. They were ready to do this. And Peter Berg's like, okay, so what's the plan here? He goes, well, I'm going to jump off this cliff. I'm going to bounce off that tree, roll around. Then I'm going to fall off that ledge and I'm going to land on my back. Peter Berg's like, wait, come again? You're going to bounce? What? And he's like, I'm going to bounce off that tree, roll around, fall off that ledge and land on my back. And he goes, okay, and he yells action. The guy jumps off the cliff and he slammed into the tree, broke his ribs, punctured a lung. Next thing you know, they're medevacing him out of there. And Peter Berg's like, okay, everybody, I appreciate that you're all jacked up to do this, but we have to tone things down like a little bit. That's a studio wouldn't allow that to happen. Like, you have to have that planned. Usually in a movie, I know stunts go bad, but you don't say, well, I'm going to do this.
Well, let's just try it out. Let's just try jumping off the cliff and see what happens. I mean, it should make good film.
I like the spirit.
Yeah.
It's
on the screen. Look good on screen.
It's
so
like
you can't argue with that part of it.
Those were the ones that those are the images that come straight to my mind when I think of this movie.
Rolling down the hill and slamming into a rock. It's like, oh my God.
And literally just hitting their heads. And I was just like,
Yeah, and it was a great scene. And Peter Berg, again, he says, like, he likens it, his inspiration, or he likens it to 9/11. He said when he was in New York and he, we were watching people jump out of the towers because they didn't have another choice necessarily. And these guys didn't have that choice. They were jumping, they were throwing themselves off of this cliff because that was at that time their only option. And what I appreciate too is how they filmed it. Like, they filmed this in 90 pieces, and the editor was able, you had to put it all together, and like just knowing that there were okay, so we have this jump, we got this rolling around, and he had to get the characters' faces in there. And I know some of the actors actually did some of their stunts. But I mean, the falling down scenes were pretty hairy.
I'm sure they were, but it was great. It turned out great for all the effort they put in, all the angles, all the editing. I think that those were the best shots in the entire film.
Yeah,
there's the falling film. That's my opinion.
Want to talk casting?
Yes.
So Mark Wahlberg, you mentioned Randall Emmett, which, by the way,
full disclosure, go ahead.
Well, John and I work for him, along with Kevin Undergaro and Maria Menounos, and quite an interesting character here in the business. But very good guy. And him and Mark obviously have collaborated a lot, in the past, and so it's to no surprise that Mark was the first actor to sign on.
And then from there we got Taylor Kitsch, Emile Hirsch, Ben Foster in particular.
Mark brought in Ben Foster. He recommended him to Peter Berg and said, "Hey, you should."
They'd worked on what was the last one they did?
Contraband.
Thank you. Yeah.
That's it.
Do you think that this overall, for at least the 4 leads, was casted well?
I mean, if you're asking, did they look like their counterparts in real life? No, but in a good way. I don't know. Yeah, these guys look, they're buff and things like that, and that's all well and good, but they look like actors to me, but they told the story well.
Yeah.
I guess I just felt that the actors really invested in this film, especially because, like, they had to work for it and they had to prove that they could play these people. In particular, I know Emile Hirsch was under, like, a strict regimen of having to work out because they thought he was, like, too small, and he, like, had to go in and, like, they had people spying on him, making sure that he was doing all the work. Taylor Kitsch, like, I thought that this was a very, I guess, in a way, redeeming role for him since Battleship and a couple of other things. I thought he did really well. In particular, I thought that they grew, and I thought that you could tell that they cared about this project. And I mean, it's reflected in how much work they put in, how much training they all put in.
They did 3 weeks. Well, they obviously did training beforehand, but they put in 3 weeks down in New Mexico run
by Luttrell, and a bunch of other military
of just straight military training. And then on top of that, I know a lot of them took pay cuts or were working at reduced rates.
Yeah,
just because they wanted to be involved. And
so did Berg.
Yeah, that's just. I was like, that's really cool.
I thought it was good. I did have every once in a while when I looked at Emile, I went. I wasn't trying to, but I just went, only I don't know. It wasn't about his ability. I thought it was fine. It's just like he didn't really look like what I expected.
There's like, he's so nice.
Yeah, something about it. It's like,
but he felt, what I liked about him in particular, in that moment, right? He's got basically no fingers, right? And he just. He went to a childlike presence that that he as an actor,
right?
I feel towards him, and so he was like, motherfucker, and then everyone's like, dude, quiet, stop being a little like, whoa, this man's got nothing. So I really respected that. I thought in terms of their acting, their movements. I felt I don't know truly if they're authentic or not, but they felt.
But they looked, then they looked the shoot move cover thing. I mean, that looked all. I mean,
their training paid off.
Was great.
The performances for me, I thought they were right across the board. They were fine. They were, they made you want to believe in them, and they're the likability factor. And Mark Wahlberg plays those kind of roles really well. I think he can do a Ted, and then he can go into a movie like this or a Contraband. He or the Michael Bay, the Pumping Iron one, Pain and Gain or whatever that was. But he's a good actor, And as far as Taylor Kitsch goes, I mean, Friday Night Lights. I mean, he's a good actor. don't forget, Peter Berg directed Battleship, and I think he took Battleship so he could do this movie.
He did, yeah.
So, I mean, Battleship, but, I personally, I don't think John Carter is as bad as a lot of people would make you think it is. It's not a fantastic movie by any stretch, but it definitely was not the worst movie of the year that year. And Taylor Kitsch I thought he was very good in Savages. I thought he was, I think he's a good actor. He's just trying to find his way. Emile Hirsch is the one. I mean, this is a guy who continues to act. He too was in Savages, and he was really good in Savages. And, this is the guy that's coming from Speed Racer. So, which is not as good a movie as John Carter. I'll just be kind. And I think Emile Hirsch is, I think he's shaping up to be, a decent actor, and I think their chemistry, you could tell that they trained together. Their chemistry, I thought, was really good. We were talking about, I did bring up other war movies while I was watching this, and while I like this movie, like, Zero Dark 30, Black Hawk Down is another one that I was thinking of a lot, because Black Hawk Down, about the the Apache, I believe it was Apache helicopter, and how that whole thing was just a mess. So, obviously Saving Private Ryan. And I think those movies are better than this movie, but this movie ain't so bad. Like, I wasn't surprised it didn't get the Academy accolades that I think they wanted. But, it's still worth watching. It's a good flick.
I definitely think it was a good movie. Maybe it's just the other caliber of films that are out this year where I was not surprised that it really didn't get the award nod. And thinking about it, I would maybe have put it up for something. It would have to be coming either from like a direction or cinematic or editing standpoint. I wouldn't be putting it in the best actor, best film categories. But maybe that's just because I thought that there were a lot of really wonderful films this year.
Yeah,
and
no, I mean, it's a tough landscape.
Because if I put this movie next to Hurt Locker, personally, I will watch this more times than I'm going to watch Hurt Locker again.
Plus, I mean, I think part of it, not to get too far into it, but it came out too late.
You mean for Academy?
Yeah, I mean, it had a kind of a limited release in 2013 because
the
25th. Wide release was the 10th.
Right.
So.
Yeah, so January 10th is when it really came out, and so it didn't gain traction.
It almost seemed like an afterthought, I guess. But maybe they didn't think that they were going to get an Oscar. Well, screw it.
I think Universal was pushing, because ever since its first screening, they were talking about, number one, the first screening that they held for it went over really well, much better than they could have hoped for. But again, one of the things it says, this is a very intense, very nail biting. It's a very intense, brutal, in your face war movie. They said the performances are good, and I think the reason why they released it on the 25th is to get that Academy. To get that Academy push.
Yeah, because you have to get it out.
Yeah, you have to get it out before the end of the year, and so there's no reason to release. I mean, the 25th was a hell of a day for movies, because there was like 100 of them coming out. So they squeezed it in.
On Christmas. Hey kids, let's go see
Lone Survivor.
Happy movie.
So,
the Lone Ranger.
Yeah, right, exactly. But again, you talk about the budget and people taking pay cuts. I mean, the production budget was estimated at about $40 million, and I think with P&A, that's $75 million. Mm-hmm. That's for that kind of a movie and the way that it looks. Yeah. For $40 million production budget, that's not bad. They used all digital cameras. They used the red cameras to film.
Yeah, they wanted to use the ARRI ones, but the red Scarlet ones were just so much more compact.
Yeah. So
especially the train they were shooting in.
Yeah. I mean, they got some good, just confined spaces. Them sleeping in the little bushes.
Oh yeah,
right.
They got some good footage.
Yeah, they got some really good footage, and the cinematography was good too. And I think the way I looked at it too was like there was a dichotomy between man and nature. You had some beautiful vistas. It was a scope film, and it filled the screen. It looked great when they were looking over those mountaintops and things like that. Although I didn't realize that Afghanistan had so many pine trees.
Supposedly
I believe
supposedly it does.
Alpine.
That was in the extra footage, because one of the things he mentioned in like their depiction, their models of creating this hill was that people have such a stereotypical view of Afghanistan of being like dirt and kind of flat, and he was like, no, where we were, it was green. There were trees everywhere. And so according to Marcus Luttrell, that was a very accurate, good depiction of the scenery that they were involved in.
I mean, I'm not knocking it. It was just like, wow, there's a lot of Christmas trees in Afghanistan. But
maybe that's why they brought it on the 25th.
There you go.
Could be, yes.
They wanted to connect the trees.
But no, I mean, I thought that here you have these beautiful vistas, and then this tragic, awful violence is taking place in this. Like they barely even got a chance to, like, they were trying to just. You have all this beautiful vista, and they're looking through their technology to scout out a guy, and I thought that was very interesting for me while watching the movie, because there was some beautiful land there. So yeah, I like the nature verse, well, not nature verse man, but how it played against the violence that was going on in that beautiful nature.
They shot it in a documentary type setting. They used, I think, 3 cameras overall, and just shot.
Yeah.
Largely handheld.
And with very little rigging, because being on a 60-degree slope, it's really hard to get a lot of things up there.
And they did it in 44 days.
40. Oh, you have 44. I have 42.
I have 42 too. So
I'll say it's 43.
We'll say 43.
There you go.
Say 43.
$1 million bucks a day.
They had they kind of had like one trailer just overall for production.
Yeah, crazy.
They also they out of that they ran dailies and things like that. So Dimitri's world.
Yeah.
We talked about casting. We didn't talk about any of the other people in the cast, because I really enjoyed the leader of for lack of a better term, the leader of the village, the elder, the guy that I thought he did a fabulous job. Like, for whatever reason, I
Which one?
believe that guy, the guy
who
that
stood up and basically saved him.
told the Taliban, "Hey, go away." No, sorry.
It's very interesting.
He's great.
To me, I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing, but it's like he was a very good character, who did very well. But I'm having a hard time. Maybe it's because I haven't seen this movie in over a week and a half. It's like the other actors. There was a lot of other scenes and a lot of other material besides just following them in their terrain.
We talked about him.
Exactly. We also had the base. We had the people going out searching for them. We had the other helicopter who came in. We had the town. We had the Taliban. All of these other scenes were happening. And maybe it's because Luttrell's story was just so strong and what they went through was just so impactful. But a lot of those scenes like fall out the wayside of my mind. Like I'm like, they didn't bother me when I was watching them. I didn't think they were bad. They didn't stay they didn't stay with me.
Well,
they
I remember
stayed with me.
Again,
the only one I did was the Villager for me. That was the one.
Well, Eric Bana stood out for me, and the newbie.
I like the newbie.
Yeah, I like the newbie. He stood out.
Alexander Louis.
Yeah, and I liked him, and you're right. The the farmer shepherd who saved him and his son. I thought it was like really good. And again, I go back to Black Hawk Down, because again, this was about things like being stepped on by shepherds who come out of nowhere. Their communications are down, so that's just Black Hawk Down was a series of events that just got worse and worse due to whether it was a technological mishap or something went wrong. And like, these are the things that these SEALs are trained to try to. You can't think ahead for these kind of situations, but what I guess for the heroism part of it is that they continue to push forward, regardless of getting shot in the leg. I mean, this is stuff that I couldn't get through an hour and a half of training, let alone how many weeks they'd have to go train to do this. So, I found that, I didn't find it. All those people who say that it is war porn or glorifies porn, no, but I think it does accentuate that these people are over there. They are heroes, in a sense, and I think that's really, I think
they can do things that most people can't.
Yeah, absolutely.
That I will give them, definitely. What's next?
Why is everyone looking at me?
I don't know, Phil.
You look like you had something to say.
I did not.
All right. Well, we've kind of talked to editing. Is there anything you want to add to that? Because it started out a 2.5 hour cut. We brought it in at under 2. I don't know what the final.
I just gotta say, I loved the montage in the beginning. I mean, we talked a little bit about that, but I felt that was so well done, and it was just.
You mean the archival footage?
Yeah, the archival footage of all the training, but that was a great, however long that was, like 3-minute segment, to really pull the audience into the movie and get us a feel of what these guys are like, their mental and physical strength and capabilities. And I was immediately sucked into that, and I thought it was really well. And then all the pictures at the end, just depicting that this is based on a true story, and there are, again, people like this out in the world like that. It really made me feel for everything that happened.
I would agree. I think there was a really smart move to include the archival footage and have that be part of the film to set the context. Nobody disagrees. Okay, moving on.
I told you, I like Albion.
Phil, you had other things to say about what really happened in the controversy.
Oh, and all of
there.
those papers, for those of you who can't see.
We've kind of been skipping around, but in terms of... Sarah stole my pen.
I stole his pen. I stole his papers. That's what all this funding's going on over
You
here.
know, what I liked about it was the music to me was quite interesting. You know, and there, in terms of the editing, there was a nice mix of, you know, I'll call it live action for lack of a better term, and then we really kind of went into hyper reality, right? So we're talking about the falling down, but then, you know, in that moment of as soon as the kid leaves, right? And by the way, he looked like an antelope. My God,
running down.
I know.
He really did. I mean, and especially because going into that hyper reality of how slow it was, and like he looked like he was like, imagine skiing at the top level down a mountain. He looked like that, going, you know, just so smooth. Yeah. And with
he was
that
bass running.
Exactly. That coupled with the slow build of that music, you knew, like, okay, this guy's gonna
be screwed.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's just a matter of time, and so I thought the way they handled those things worked really well. The reveal of, you know, all the men
on the ridge.
Yeah, you know, so you have you know, the four of them, and they're kind of camouflaged, and you know, you can't really see, you can't really tell the difference between a tree and them. Right. And then he looks, you know, I'm going scouting, and then there's just black figures on this mountain, and you're like, oh, oops. Yeah. Now that's it. Now it's on. Yeah. Be ready for gunfight. Yeah. So I thought I really enjoyed that aspect of it.
All right. So what other controversies do you want to
I mean, address? You know, we've been kind of
talked a little bit about morality. We talked a little bit about the media's influence on war, brutality of this film, but it was what else was there?
I mean,
the accuracy, what is real, what is...
that question again. Why would anybody think it should be anything but brutal or graphic if it's a war movie?
I don't understand. Why would you?
Be pretty and nice. Obviously,
shouldn't you want it to be? So when we actually have to do this, or think we have to do it, we kind of have some sort of understanding of what we're getting involved in.
Or that, or a disdain for it.
Yeah, exactly.
You know,
that's what I mean. Shouldn't be somewhat informed of what could happen to put people in harm's way. I mean, shouldn't we have that graphic understanding, that visceral?
And that's what Marcus is saying, and you know, part of it is. You know, but then I don't know. I feel like he's backtracking in some sense because he's saying, you know, people really connected with the hopelessness of the four of them.
Right.
He's like, well, we weren't hopeless.
Yeah, I didn't get that. I didn't think they were.
I didn't feel
because
that
I don't think they ever felt that they were hopeless. They like you had said.
We can see that it's hopeless, but like,
yeah, there wasn't a time where they said we're gonna get out of this. We're gonna kill them all. We're gonna get out of this. They kept on saying. You know, even when Taylor Kitsch's character, you know, decided to go try to get some semblance of a signal, and you know, we knew it was a suicide mission. He, to an extent, sort of knew. He goes, but you know, they still said, "Yeah, we're gonna kill them all. Don't worry, we're gonna get back together." But I think too that could be part of the psyche of what it takes to survive in that type of a horrific situation. You know, and again, to me, the only scene. And again, it could have been because I was psyched up, you know, I was expecting this, you know, extremely brutal thing. Like I thought I was going to literally see bullets go like through bodies and stuff. Was the Ben Foster scene to me was probably the most uncomfortable for that.
One of the scenes that on the other side that I really, really enjoyed and really liked that I think adds to this is the fact what we got to see their reactions to when the helicopters came and when they thought they were going to be saved. Because there's this wordage and this use of like, we are going to survive, we're going to make it through, like we are soldiers
cavalry's
being hard,
there.
and then all of a sudden they come and there's the cheer and there's the joy, and because they're so joyful, it makes you even understand that underneath it there is an understanding of what a dire situation they were in and what's going on, and then to then also get the drop after that and the unexpectedness of not being saved. I thought that moment in that scene was shot really well, and how they kind of gave you every perspective on it, from inside the copter to outside to the ground. I thought that was a really nice moment.
Yeah, I also, what I enjoyed is, they hurl themselves down these mountains and just get killed upon these rocks. And then they get up and they talk for like 2 or 3 minutes and then bullets again. It's like, God, just a second. Just catch our breath there.
Yeah, I mean, that was a nice moment because it was just a reminder for the audience because it is a film technique, how oftentimes you get that and it's like, well, this is not that.
No.
Yeah.
What I like, so speaking about the village and various things, a lot of visual effects were used in muzzle flashes and to kind of add that. But then in the filming of the actual village, there was only 2 huts.
Yeah.
The rest were added.
Which is great. And then same with the base. Apparently there was only a few of the base buildings and they just filled it out. It's like, oh, that was great. I didn't notice anything.
I didn't notice at all.
Yeah.
No.
It wasn't distracting, so it was done well.
Yeah, that's right. Didn't take me out of the movie. And, wow,
So
where did they find a village? Great. Let's go.
Yeah. I mean, because when I watched The Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit, it just reeks of visual effects to me.
Because it's just all over the place?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, there are...
This doesn't.
Well, everything twinkles. But I like it. I like The Hobbit. I like it.
I didn't see it. So.
But going to visual effects too, just this past week, a reel has made it onto the internets there about Wolf of Wall Street and the types of visual effects that were used. And then for locations that I had no idea, that there's this house in the beach that was surrounded by all this stuff, and apparently it wasn't. Like there was the house there, but its background was. So it's amazing how you can inlay and make a village up for with only 2 huts, so to speak. I thought the village siege was really, that was cool. And again, I think it was just put in there to give some semblance of some catharsis that the bad guys are getting it, and we need to. They shut these people up pretty badly, and we need to get Mark Wahlberg out of there. So I don't know.
I'm actually surprised at how short the original cut of this movie was.
Oh yeah, 2.5. Yeah, I know. You think it would be longer, right?
I mean, just talking about Wolf of Wall Street.
4 hours. Yeah, exactly.
Most movies come in at like 3 hours on their first cut, and especially because they said, given their shooting style, they talked about if there was time, they'd shoot extra. Yeah. And so when you have all that footage, you're kind of apt to just like, okay, let's try it, let's see it at least, and then we'll take it out. And sometimes that's bad because then you end up falling in love and don't want to take it out.
Right.
So I give them a lot of credit for their due diligence. I mean, all in all, 7 months it's kind of a studio movie, kind of not a studio movie. So to complete in post-production a movie in 7 months.
It's pretty impressive.
They were very efficient. It just seemed like using those digital cameras too, I think helped them out a lot. They could probably do a lot of their daily editing right there and then shortly after being filmed, so they knew the shots that they had, what they might need. I mean, Peter Berg on this particular film, especially if you're going to compare it to Battleship, and I think that,
Battleship.
Well, but again, I think that, and I don't know if anybody has ever asked him this question, but prep for Battleship. And this isn't, I'm not talking about good or bad the movie is, but there are 2 different movies. And, if you film this one in 44 days with 3 red cameras, when he was going into work for Battleship, I'd like to know how different was the planning and going into Battleship and what he had to map out a storyboard and then going into this movie. Did he know that he was going to be going into Lone Survivor with a different mindset and, I'm going to do this more independently, so to speak? To me, that would be interesting to see a director who's directed something really big. And this one is sort of kind of, when you think about it, it's a little bit more intimate. You're talking basically 4 main characters, this one locale,
and it's for all intents and purposes, it's a real location. Yes, they added onto the village and things like that, but you're in this environment, you can see it, and I think we call him Crazy Randall being who he is, but also this was very dear to Mark Wahlberg, and Mark having that Boston mentality of like, we're gonna do it, we're gonna do it 100%, and we're gonna do it the right way.
Right.
And so when you have that kind of collaboration, then it becomes a lot easier. And yeah, you can throw guys off a cliff and
Exactly.
Because they
have
want
them
to
puncture lungs.
Jump.
And,
Yeah.
You land where you land. We'll get you. Don't worry. Just jump.
exactly.
And you
There's
brought
some
up
pads down there somewhere. Go find them.
Well, Peter Berg even asked that stunt guy, he goes, do you want more pads? He goes, no, I'm just going to jump right off. I'm
Okay.
fine. Okay. But you talked about music.
Yes.
And actually, I think the music in this movie was perhaps the only subtle thing that there was. I mean, he used Explosions in the Sky heavily, he had them in Friday Night Lights, very guitar driven, but not heavy guitar. And it sort of kind of adds in like this nice bed. And actually, that was the only subtle thing. There wasn't any big bombastic kind of music that there was no like orchestration, big score to punctuate a lot of what was going on as far as the battle scenes or anything. And I too think that makes this a movie that doesn't glorify doesn't glorify war. There was no huge upswell of orchestrations, and patriotic music. Yeah, this Explosions in the Sky, which is very subdued and it is subtle, and and I thought that their soundtrack was pretty good. I thought it was different.
I agree. I really, because again, it especially in the moments when you had the slow motion, it could have been so easy to use that as a device.
Mm-hmm.
But rather it was, okay, watch this and hear the actual sound effects versus the music.
Right.
And get the realness out of that, and you make of it what you want. But it's there and it's real.
Anything on music? I have nothing to add because I don't even remember it.
I just remember that. I just remember that.
Didn't stick out for me.
The only music that sticks out for me is when the kid's
going down the ravine rocks. I
don't even remember that. What was
you don't remember the Antelope Kid?
It was a very slow.
I remember him. I just don't remember the music.
Imagine waking up and you're kind of just stretching, and it's that type of music.
Okay.
It's not, again, it's just like it's very ironic.
Uh-huh.
And I'm not, it's like, why would you pick that music, but in a good way?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It was a good choice.
All right, I believe you.
You're gonna have to rewatch it.
Yeah, all right.
It was. Other than that, I don't really.
Music, editing, directing, yada. I feel like we're done.
We are.
No one's saying
No, that's it.
anything.
We are.
Therefore,
One thing that we didn't talk about, because we always do talk about a legacy of a film and the social significance and whatnot. Look, we already know in hindsight it didn't get anything. It didn't get anything nomination wise, but
I got 2.
What and for
sound editing.
Sound editing
and best sound editing and best sound mixing.
Okay,
There you
so
go.
I'm surprised it didn't get.
all the sound.
Yeah.
I'm surprised that it didn't get like makeup.
Yeah, I thought the makeup was great.
Yeah.
Oh,
Greg Nicotero from Walking Dead and other horror. I mean, it was great. It was gruesome, but it was good. But
Especially Ben Foster's making us like,
Oh
my gosh,
yeah.
wonderful.
Oh, good God. But
Wonderful in this bad way.
Universal is not unhappy. I mean, the movie's grossed estimated around 50 million thus far, 54 worldwide.
Yeah.
So that's not too bad considering, even its limited release gross. When it opened up, it did 90,000. So, I think their audiences are liking the movie, which, again, you couldn't get audiences to go to a movie like this 5 years ago. They were not. They weren't paying money. They didn't want to deal with it. But I think when you give them an ending that has some semblance of a catharsis, a release, and this one did have heart to me. I found that his saviors, I thought that was a very nice touch. Very, very nice touch.
Yeah, and that was always, for me, that was going to be their uphill battle, because in Zero Dark 30, I mean, Osama bin Laden, easy, done, sold, right? And what's going to happen, but you're like, okay, I want it to happen. With this, okay, now you got to switch sides, and you got to really make me care about these characters,
right?
And then it's going to really hinge on that.
Right. And, I'll even take it to, remember when we talked about Captain Phillips and the end of Captain Phillips? Like, that ending, too, really sells all of that movie, like how he reacts. And, again, I think, when you throw a little heart into a movie that's brutal, like, you can get a bigger audience to come and accept it, and they'll come out feeling not like they were just beat up for 2 hours, but feeling like they came out and going, wow, that was really good.
Yeah.
You know.
That's true.
And on that note,
That's it.
What's our
We're
next
good.
movie?
We've got tons coming up. We've got
What do we need people to see?
Philomena, Her.
Philomena is wonderful, and Her is wonderful.
We'll be doing 47 Ronin.
Tom
We'll be
doesn't agree.
reviewing lesser movies like Hercules.
Lesser.
Okay, it's got a 5% rating on Rotten Tomatoes. What do you want me to say?
No, I
It's-
think
you know
I'm
what?
not saying I'm just thinking it's hysterical that you came up with a lesser movie. I think that's great.
What do you want me to
We're not
say?
doing
Nothing. I think
Hercules.
it's terrific.
Dimitri's not going to work.
It's not going to be
it's a
in
lesser
theaters long
movie.
enough
That's right.
for people to go see it. We want people
I think
to
that's
tune
very
in.
diplomatic. It's a lesser movie.
It's 2014. We've got a lot of great stuff in the works.
Yeah.
Definitely check out our Oscar prediction show. And then post Oscars, we'll probably do something fun. So a lot of cool stuff coming up.
And where can it?
Stay tuned.
What are they
Movie
running?
Anatomy on
There you
Twitter.
go.
Anatomyofammovie.com. Spread the word. Tell a friend. Make a friend for all I care.
But not a lesser friend. And that's all we
Someone who
have time
likes
for.
movies.
Talk to you next time.
Go to the movies.
Okay.
Get us out of here.
From producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the rest of the Anatomy of a Movie staff, we would like to thank you for listening and subscribing to the show. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to email or tweet us. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been Anatomy of a Movie.
Thanks for watching Anatomy of a Movie on YouTube. For more on your favorite movies, subscribe to our channel here and be sure to let us know what you think in our comment section below here. Bye.
Emotional
There you
connection,
go.
and then go watch
That's
it,
right,
and
and
it's
it's
still
very
a great
successful.
movie.
I mean, it's still surprising to me that we kind of question out character development, things like this. There's 007, the most successful franchise in the history. There's no character development.
Well, they are more and more these days. They are
Yes,
doing it
they're
more and more. In the
definitely-
beginning, I agree.
Okay,
I
the
totally
first
agree.
40.
No, I completely agree. There's no argument. And
Yeah,
I'm not. And again, I don't disagree that it's a good movie. I liked it. I think it's a good movie for what it is. I'm just saying that I think it's warranted when people say there's no character development. But why you're going to this for character development is kind of baffling to me.
This is a realistic,
Yeah,
war
and that's
action
what it
movie.
is. And if you can accept it for that, I think it's great because that's what it is. But people who want it to be something else, I go, well, you just totally missed the boat on what this movie is.
I agree. And if that was I think a mission of this was to show
Yeah.
a very realistic
Yeah.
depiction that really got people to see another viewpoint, and to describe the troubles of this one man's story and what he went through. And I do think they did all of that.
Yeah, I thought that, and I thought it was so smart that at the beginning they showed the archival footage of the guys.
I like the
doing
training.
I thought that was great because here's the thing: if you not had that, at least in my, well, this is my belief. All the stuff that we saw, all the tumbling down and the getting shot up, and all the stuff that they endured, you would go, yeah, that's just Hollywood stuff. Until you see all the training they go to beforehand, then you realize what kind of person can endure that. And you see that what they're made of. And had it not been for that context, it would have been too easy to write off, oh, that's just special effects. They're doing,
It's interesting you say that because, I mean, might as well start with the first topic. In terms of the writing of this, right? Obviously, it's based off a book.
Yeah.
And
Luttrell.
Marcus Luttrell's book, and in the book, he actually chronicles from his start in the Navy SEALs in 1999, all the way to that. But in writing it, and obviously, it was like, okay, well, that really doesn't make sense to put it in. Let's focus on this one event. But by doing that little, it obviously serves that purpose, but it also kind of it didn't chronicle Marcus specifically in that little opening, but it pays homage.
Yeah.
But it also does, homage.
It does, but it really sets the context for who these people are, for what kind of person can
who puts
be
themselves
this.
in this situation.
Yeah, who's
who
not
has
only willing
the
to, but
mental
has and physical capability
yeah.
to do this. And right then I'm going, geez. I mean, I'm just. I am.
One thing I really did like about this movie is as action-packed and physical as it
Yeah.
was, what carried through was the mental
toughness.
struggle
Exactly,
that it is.
yeah.
And that gets overlooked, I think, so much in more in action films. It becomes all about muscle endurance. And in this, it's like you see how hard it is.
What they endure. Yeah, and it's the mental game that they're able to, and I think that's set up by all that archival footage. Because I just love that when they say, oh, I've met my limit, and they ring the bell, the helmet goes down,
and they're done. And it's such like a crazy.
Yeah, and these guys who go through this, these 4 guys who go through, they haven't met their limit yet. They just keep going. And I just go, wow, my hat's off to them.
Exactly, and
that's
it's this continued fight, and like that's what Marcus Terrell said, just about the fact that it's continuously never giving up.
Yeah.
There was never a sense of giving up until the people died.
Exactly.
Like it's just always pushing through, and that's what I really like about this film is that the fact that I feel like from what I've read and from all the interviews I've seen with the science footage, their goal for this movie to get the message across, to show that side of that world really came through for me. Yeah. And from a filmmaking perspective, to articulate your movie so well in the vision you wanted is a really impressive feat. So I was very happy with it. Phil, why are you flipping through pages of research already?
Well, I think he's going through the writing. He wants to get back. Well, okay, so obviously, for those who don't know, the director, Peter Berg, also wrote the screenplay. He based it mostly on almost entirely off of Luttrell's book, but a couple things he got from real-world experience. He was embedded with...
Well, he loves working with veterans anyway.
Yes, he does.
Often
uses them, and used them in this...
as a producer role.
Yeah.
Harry Double H, producer. I'll look his name up. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I was going to mention how a lot of this movie was produced by benefactors who had all donated.
There been a greater separation, I probably would have enjoyed this movie even more. But
were you comparing it to Captain Phillips as you were watching it, or was that a later, like an afterthought?
It was at the start of the movie, then once in the middle, and then definitely once at the end.
Okay, so it was really like present in your mind as you were watching it.
Yeah, but again, I really enjoyed this movie. I definitely want to talk about this movie. If truth be told, does it hold up as high as Captain Phillips now?
It's fascinating that you say that, because I never went there as I was watching it, which is, I'm really wanting to know what caused that. So what made you think Captain Phillips in the middle of this?
Okay, Captain Phillips, it's about Lone Survivor, just the title itself.
Right.
To me, meant, it's about one man's kind of journey through survival.
Right.
So Captain Phillips, one man's journey through survival, and also obviously in a hostile environment, here you have the Afghanistan terrain and everything else, and there you have pirates and whatnot. And at the end, the big difference, if I can, I guess, cut sooner, is, at the end, Tom Hanks' walk and his last speech is so earned.
Right.
Whereas this, we get it at the beginning, and I was like, I'm not ready for that.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. Sure.
Okay, so that's interesting. Like, for me, it's so different because the people involved put themselves in different situations. Like, the Men and Lone Survivor went into this mission completely knowing, like, what they get into. This is their job. This is their career. And Captain Phillips, it was some pirates came over. To me, it's a totally different situation. For me, the monologue or the explanation didn't come in too early, but that's probably because before I watched this, I had watched kind of behind-the-scene footage about interviews with the families, descriptions of the guys, the training that was going into it. So when I went in to see Lone Survivor, I was already equipped with the knowledge of kind of who these soldiers were as people and how their families felt about them. So I already had established an emotional connection to them. So I already was invested in them as their lives, as other than just a Navy SEAL. Other than that, to me, they were actual people already going in. So I didn't need them, I guess, to earn that, explanation to already feel worried about them or to have a connection to them. But movies, on the opposite side, movies, I guess, should stand alone. I shouldn't have to watch.
Well, I mean, you had that point, which is, that's great that you brought that in. I didn't see those. I mean, I knew they were out there, but I chose not to because I wanted to, again, I take the movie as it comes. For me, the movie, if you take the movie as just this chronicle of this man's event, as Phil said, this one man's journey through survival, then I thought it was very successful. I mean, one of the biggest criticisms is there wasn't any time spent with character development, But you didn't need it because you had
'Cause
seen
I
all
already
that,
had
so
them,
you
yes.
already knew them as humans and all this other stuff. And I think that's warranted. I think it's a fun movie. I liked watching it. I thought it was, and for what it is, I think it's a good movie. But if you're going into it expecting a lot of character development, you will be sorely dissatisfied. And I think that's a warranted criticism. But it's still it's a good movie.
That surprises me because the first 20 minutes is spent with them like racing and things like
yeah,
that.
there's
But
not
the
a hell of
first
a lot of
20
character.
minutes,
though.
it's
Character, I get it. It's
showing-
characterization. It's
Yeah, but
not.
it's not development.
it's showing the world. It's
Yeah.
showing the environment. It's not giving you the actual individual attention on differentiating kind of who each soldier is from one another.
Right.
It's kind of grouping them together and showing their lifestyle.
And I
getting
think that was
people
great.
set-
I think, but there's no development after. Once the fight starts, when the fight starts, there isn't much development after that. And there isn't any time for it, so you get it. But in other movies where you've had, for instance, the easy one is Saving Private Ryan. There's more character development in that one. Of course, they had more time to do it. But anyway, but it doesn't stop me from enjoying this movie. I just think it's a warranted criticism. I don't think it's, But you just have to know that going in. It's just that's not what this is. It's not a character
You can do what
piece.
I did.
Or you
and
can see
watch
exactly
the behind the scene footage that they provided you with.
Yeah, you can do that absolutely, and then you got there you
Gain
go.
your emotion.
I'm opening. We have an eye, sort of a nostril, 2 teeth. One of the teeth has a small cavity. Close call, folks, but I think we got here just in time.
Presented by Maria Menounos and Kevin Undergaro. This is Anatomy of a Movie. In-depth discussions and breakdowns of various movie titles. And now that you've seen the movie, let the dissection begin.
Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us for another Anatomy of a Movie. This week's Operation Lone Survivor. I'm John Comerford. I'm joined on the panel by Sarah Stratton.
Hello. I really liked this week's operation. Operation. I liked it.
Of course. Double meaning. And Phil Svitek.
Hello, everybody.
And in the booth is Marissa Serafini. Marissa, thanks very much for joining us.
Hello.
Okay, so did it survive your scrutiny?
Okay, so I know Phil saw this very recently, but I saw this movie approximately, I want to say over a week and a half ago. So really close to when it just came out.
Right.
And I'm living with what's really stuck with me.
Yeah.
And versus I know when I just got out of it, I was thinking about kind of a lot of the minor characters, like the 16 who came in the helicopter and all those scenes. And up until we came into the studio, I'd completely forgotten about all those. I was literally just thinking about the 4 and about their journey and what I took away from it that way. And I think that's a good thing because I think that's where the message and the heart of the story is. And that stuck with me, so that I'm really happy with.
All right. There you go. Phil.
I really enjoyed it through no fault of their own. The timing couldn't have been worse with Captain Phillips and these guys. Because, I mean, at least for me, and, and it's kind of been happening with the panel just in general, through our collective knowledge, we've been doing these for a while now.
Yeah.
And so we're going to be referencing movies that we've talked about. Sure. And for me, with this one in particular, a huge comparison can be made with Captain Phillips. So, had there